This is 3 years of game dev in a nutshell. So I'm Soap, I'm president of Interlake's Game Dev Club. And how did I get into game dev? So this is a bit of a long story. In 8th grade, you see, we had like this really boring class called coding in Python. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have taken the same class to make like crappy games, but we use this program called Pygame. And I would always finish the assignments way too early. So during the free time, I would just make these really terrible games. But at the moment, I thought these were like the peak of human performance and that like they should be released on Steam. This is a video of said game. This is me just messing around. Yeah, so as you can see, not a very good game. So there's a key design flaw in this game, and that was that it would keep on getting faster and faster until the amount you jumped was more than the distance between each step. Sorry, okay. And then eventually the game would just get impossible like that. But yeah, the main thing about this was that I was just experimenting and making these crappy games and getting better each time. But okay, the real bad thing about this was the code. Okay, so this is before I learned what classes or methods were. So I somehow made this game using just if statements. And if you look at this disastrous code. This is like Yandere dev, but like worse. I just have all these ifs. But I kept on experimenting, and the next game I made was this. Oh, warning, it's being loud.
Got it.
Okay, so as you can see, I discovered user input. I've also discovered like sound, but this is still a really crappy game. And if you look at the code, I did this, and this is probably like making you guys gag. I physically wrote every single key and like tied it to a character. And further along, you see, I finally learned about classes, but I did not know about methods. Oh, I got one method there, but I was using them very ineffectively. Yeah, but again, the only thing that mattered was that I was having fun and experimenting. But so here we're finally getting into Unity. And this brings us to 8th grade summer, where I was really bored and I came across this tutorial from Brackies. And Brackies is this dude on YouTube who creates these tutorials. I'll talk more about him later, but I would marry that dude. I would do anything to get him to notice me. He's like credited for like every single game developer success. But I made this game pretty much by carbon copying his tutorial. Yeah, and here you can see like I'm actually getting into 3D stuff. And I've like successfully made some scripts and attached them to objects, and they're like moving. But now I thought I was ready to create like this mind-blowing game. Truly I was not. If you look at this next game, This is my second game. You kind of just went around, killed bunnies, and the worst part was the jumping. So every time you get jumped, yeah. So the problem is that like I didn't know that physics existed in Unity. So I physically coded the amount you move up and down every single time. But this was still a drastic improvement from what I was making like half a year ago, even though like this one is still pretty bad. But I kept on making games. Let's see. I studied on this horror game. This is like some old stories from 8th grade. And you can see like more development. It's like first person. And you have actual pathfinding. Yeah, but ironically for this game, I actually stopped developing it because like I got too scared every time I had to like test it. Yeah, so I was just scared away by my own game. But next up is my favorite game, and this is a birthday gift for my friend. All of the voice acting and music is done by me. Yeah, I'm sorry for your ears, guys. Yes, this game is 700% scarier than the horror game. Okay, so now we're getting into some more recent stuff. This is Troop, and this is like the first time working with an actual team. I would 100% recommend like working with a team instead of alone. It's just so much fun. But this was in 9th grade when I joined this club at my school called Game Dev Club. yeah, this was kind of a tower defense. At the end, it got so buggy that we just decided not to work on it anymore. But yeah, this was probably the most fun I've ever had working on a project. And this one won a couple of awards. It was really fun. Okay, and then this is the last game I'll be showing. This was my solo game this year, called Gasser, and this is the trailer. Volume warning, guys. Yeah, this one took so long, but it was worth it in the end. And so this is a really quick making of video. I actually invited Nathan and Grace, two of my friends, to help out so that I could get into a competition that needed minimum 3 people. But this is our making of.
On November with a design doc on Google Docs.
So the game went through a lot of changes. Originally, the concept was based around a fighting mechanic where you combined chemicals. The storyline was also really long, and so after realizing we were too ambitious, we rewrote the game and cut down most of it. We also decided not to finish it, but to stop after killing Mombi, so that we could kind of preserve quality over quantity.
Then me and Soap made a bunch of concept art.
And I played a theme, a Chinese song from my violin practice book. Since we mostly worked on stuff independently, and Grace and my roles were smaller, we usually just chatted over text on Discord.
So for the code, I use C# and Unity and all of these scripts. And even though we didn't collaborate on the scripts, I still used Git for version control and just to be safe. Throughout the process, there were plenty of bugs, but by far the biggest change to the game, code-wise, was switching from each level being a different scene, which was slow and caused tons of annoyance and errors due to objects not staying between scenes, to putting them all in the same scene and kind of just enabling and disabling them depending on which room you were in. So this was a giant change and was definitely challenging as I had to rewrite just a giant chunk of the code. I had to move a bunch of objects, etc. And making the game was a long and hard process. We didn't track time, but it probably clocked up to well over 100 hours. But throughout the whole way, we had a lot of fun and we learned a ton of stuff.
The biggest takeaway was going through the whole process from concept to end product for a project of this scale.
It really showed the importance of organization and thinking things through from the beginning.
So overall, we're really proud of the art and sound of the game, as it looks and sounds really professional. But most of all, we're just really proud of bringing such an ambitious project to life, and we hope you guys like it.
Yeah, so that kind of got into the game dev process, which I'll be talking more about later. And
On
finally,
November with a design doc on Google.
sorry. Next, I'm just gonna show like a really quick run through of some other games. So matching the theme of this. Oh, did you join any game jams? Oh, actually, let me answer these questions in the next slide. Okay, so the theme for this year was actually environmentalism, which does go along with this hackathon theme really well. If you look at Tube from before, that was essentially like rebuilding a home in the ocean. Gasser was like destroying the last forest, a bit of like a dark take. But these other games are also
where many
about
humans live above you
environmentalism.
in a world of comfort. Below the surface lies a struggle that others will never see. Enter you. You're just a fish who's just trying to survive in the harsh world of the sea. As you progress, the challenges will escalate.
This one is called Life is Hard in the Sea. We have this one that is about a penguin trying to rebuild its iceberg. Yeah, and all of these managed to make a story out of like a theme as simple as environmentalism and make it kind of cute and interesting. And the next one is called Pandemonium. This one was insane. They made it in 1 week, and it was about the pandemic. We have this one from 2019. They did some fancy stuff with like 2D lights. And then you have Juice. But yeah, so that's it for like the game development like story.
Where many humans
But like just by messing around and having fun, you can get from like something like this terrible hedgehog game to Gasser or like any of our club's games in just like 1 to 2 years. And yeah, over the process, you'll have a lot of fun. But if you guys have any questions or comments, I'm just gonna take a break and answer some of these. Let's see. Okay, I have one from Lily. Where did you learn how to code? That looks incredible. Oh yeah, okay, so I actually learned Python in coding in Python. Even though the class was really, really slow and like oversimplified, I think honestly, like the slowness helped me like get a firmer grasp on the basics. But after that, in 8th grade summer, I just searched up a bunch of tutorials and learned C# so I could do game development with Unity. So what I did was I used people like Brackies, let's see, who else? A bunch of like random like godsends on YouTube who make tutorials, Stack Overflow, just everything to help me self-learn. And in 9th grade, I took computer science, which helped me learn Java. But overall, I think the best thing you can do is just self-learn and search up a bunch of tutorials. Okay, let's see. Did you
Okay.
join any game jams? I actually didn't, but I'm planning on doing a few this year if I have time. Or like hosting one. That'd be fun. Okay. How much time does each game usually take around? So this depends on like the scope of the game you're trying to make. For like a really simple one, like the like dragon one where you like hit rabbits, that took me only like 1 to 2 days. But for a game like Gasser, which was solo and like I had to draw all the art, write, make all the code, that one took like a whole school year of working on it after school. But yeah, it's all about like scope and how big you want your game to be. Did you ever learn about, I still don't know how to pronounce that, quaternions, quaternions? I don't know. I know about them, but like generally I think they're used more in like Unity 3D. I've seen them like mentioned in the tutorials I've watched, but I never really like learned about them. But this year I want to. Okay, and then from Kyle, the code seems really complicated and I don't think I'll make anything close to that. Oh, okay, don't worry about this. Once again, I started with that terrible hedgehog game. And yeah, anything, even yeah, sorry, anyways. Anyways, back to where I was at. Okay, but like even Scratch and Python and the most simple things. Yeah, that was, I'm sorry to whoever's parent that was.
Hey, don't make it any more awkward than it is.
Okay, yeah, but like just starting with something really simple like Scratch or Python can lead you to creating like things that look really complicated just by like slowly progressing with every game. Like if I started off thinking that I'd be making a game like Gasser in 1 year, I would probably be like scared away. But just start off with really simple ones. Okay, question from Kai. Do you have any tips for keeping positive no matter how many errors get thrown your way? Yeah, so errors can be really frustrating. I know some games I've started and like completely ditched due to getting stuck on an error early on and just like not wanting to fix it or not being able to fix it. But what I'd say is just like keep on working on it. If you can't fix an error and like you're about to like ditch the game because of the error, just try working around it. Maybe like working on a different feature or like getting rid of the feature altogether. But I would say just push through it, use Stack Overflow. And yeah, errors are part of the process. It's kind of like, I honestly kind of enjoy errors, even though it's painful. It's like, again, part of the process. But yeah, just keep looking at Stack Overflow and keep on trooping on. Okay, do you need to Google functions online and download them to use? It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm stuck on a feature, sometimes I'll search up like help on it, and then like people will have already made the functions and I can just kind of use them as a guide. But generally like you code your own functions. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next section, which is how to make a game. Okay, so first, generally there's 5 steps. Number 1 is concept. So I always get concepts in the middle of swim practice when I'm doing like 500 laps and like I'm bored out of my mind, and I'll think like, oh, I should make a game about like a horse, and like you have to throw swords at other horses, which is what I want to do this year. But yeah, you can get these at any time. Just like make sure you write down your ideas. But after this is kind of an optional step, which is concept art. So of course, like most programmers suck at drawing. But like if you just want to get an idea of what your game will look like, I think the best possible thing to do is like make a little drawing, even if it looks like this girl on the right from Doki Doki Literature Club. Anything is good as long as you're just writing everything down. Or you can hire an artist, and that would be a lot better. But 3 is called the MVP. And this, I always like emphasize this really much in my club. It doesn't stand for most valuable player. It stands for minimum viable product. And what this is pretty much what it says. It's the minimum viable product to have your game functioning, but without any of the extra like sparkles on top. So when you first make a game, even if it's like Overwatch, in the beginning, it's probably gonna look like a bunch of squares fighting each other in like this really terribly rendered environment. But all that matters is that you have your basic functions coded out. So if you look at this diagram, you don't start with like a perfect chunk of a game and like make it chunk by chunk. You kind of start with the whole game and you make the bare minimum for that whole game. And then you just keep on updating each function until gradually it turns into like a car from all the way from a skateboard. This can help you from not getting too like intimidated by the amount of work or like not knowing where to start if you just like boil your game down to the very core. But yeah, once you're done with your MVP, you can go on to the fun stuff. And this is like art, updates, bug fixes, all this fun stuff. For example, if your MVP looks like this, you can like slowly update everything until it looks like that on the right. And then you have like updates. Oh, and a big part of this step is to get people to play your game. Because a lot of the times, as a developer, you will like ignore certain things, but once a user plays it, they'll somehow find every single thing wrong with your game. And you can kind of use that to guide your updates. And then bug fixes, that's the most painful part. I'm just gonna ignore that. I hate bugs, but are they 2 step forward? Okay, this is step 5. This is your first build. This is generally when you release it onto a platform like Steam and you start making bank, or this is when you start submitting it into the competition. But this is not the end. After this, you have step 6 to infinity, and that's just updates. Or alternatively, you can ditch your game and make a new one. But if you released it and people are liking it, then you can just use their experiences and keep on updating your game. But yeah, that's the game dev process, all the way from concept to finish. Okay, and then to get into the actual specifics, I'm gonna guide you through a little bit of Unity. Exit out of this. Okay. Let's see. Hopefully this doesn't take too long to load up. Okay, I've created an empty project before this. Okay, EcoHack. So Unity is free unless you make like more than 100K a year from your game, which like is pretty hard to do. But you can just go onto their website and download it and you'll have it. Sorry, it takes a while to load up. And I'll just look in the chat. Oh yeah, this workshop will end in about like 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. Okay, so here we have an empty seat. So let me just go through what each thing means, because this can look really intimidating to someone new to game dev. Okay, so on your left, you have your hierarchy. And this is basically where all your objects are. So if you want to put like a player in your scene, it would kind of show up here. Right now, it's just a camera and a light. And then this is your scene view. This is kind of like the objective view of your game. You can like move around, look where everything is. Let me zoom in on this camera. Oh, that's the light, sorry. Yeah, so your scene is kind of like where you can move everything around. And then on the right, I have the game view. And this is essentially what the camera sees. So right now I have nothing in my scene. So the camera is empty, it will just see nothing. And then on the right, I have my inspector. This is, over here. This essentially shows like the details of the object you have selected. So if I select this light, it shows like, oh, I have a component light. It's yellow. It's rotated by like 50 degrees on the x-axis, -30 on the y. And then I can switch to my camera on my hierarchy over here. And now it's looking at the details of the camera. So for example, like the camera's background is blue. It listens for audio, and this is its position. Okay, and then down here is the project. This is kind of like the files of your project. So if you want to upload like some art or a script or like music, you would just drag it into here, and then you can drag it into your scene. But this like is kind of like the file directory. Okay. So let's just start off with something simple. Let's create a new cube. So over here in the hierarchy, I want to create a new cube. So I would right click and press create new 3D object, and I can just select cube. And yeah, there's my cube. And if you look in the camera view, my cube is just right there. So if I play the game, what do you think will happen? Let's see. Nothing. So right now it's just a still camera and a cube floating in the sky. So I want to do something with this. Let's make this a floor. So I've selected my cube, and it has all these components. It has a mesh filter, a mesh renderer, a collider, and you do not need to know what any of these mean yet. But for now, I just want to make this wider. So I'll go over to its scale, and I can make it longer. Oops. Okay, let's make it like that long. And then that wide. I'll move my camera up a bit. Okay, now we have a floor. Can I change its color? No, I can't. Okay, well, now we have a floor. And if I play again, I'll do nothing. But I want to spice this up. So let me add another object called cube. So this is just another cube. I can move it around and do whatever with it. Let's call this player. Okay, so again, sorry, my Zoom thing is blocking the play button. Okay, if I play this, let's see what happens. Nothing. So now we have a cube floating on top of another cube. It's a pretty crappy game. So let's make some stuff move. So let's go over to our player here. And we want this cube to drop because right now it's kind of floating and we kind of want to put like gravity on it. So let's add a component. Components are basically like traits of each object, I want to say. But let's add a rigid body. So what a rigid body does is it tells the object to be affected by physics. So you can just kind of think of a rigid body as like a body. It like applies physics to this cube. Okay, so I've added the component of a rigid body onto this cube. Now, let me play. Now, let's see what happens. It fell. It was kind of short. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me move it higher. Oops. Okay, let's play this. Ta-da! Our cube has now fallen from the sky. I think this can outsell Overwatch. Okay, but again, this game is really boring. You might as well make like a video on Premiere. So we should add some user input into this game. So how do we do that? We want to add another script to this player. And a script is a new component. Script, let's call it player movement. Okay, now we have attached a script to this cube. So now let's open this up. It's gonna open up Visual Studio. Yeah, just wait for this to load. Okay, so in every class you create on Unity, there's two functions. There's the start function, and then there's the update function. So the start function is called before the game starts. So like, let's say I start the game right now, everything in start would run once before the game starts. And then we have the update function, and this is called once per frame. So this is where like you would do all the stuff like detecting key input or like moving anything, just every single frame. Okay, so let's make this cube jump every time we press space. So let's see, how would we do this? We want an if statement. If input.get key down code dot space. Okay, so this should be fairly simple to understand. Let me write it in common form. If input detects spacebar being hit. Okay, so if you press space, it's gonna do whatever it says in here. But how can we make this cube jump when we press space? So what is jumping? It's like adding a little bit of an explosive force to this cube. So if you think of like explosive force, you think of physics. So that means we should probably do something to the rigid body. So I want to somehow reference this rigid body in the cube script. So let me go back. So I can do that by creating a new variable called rigid body. let's call it RB. And now this script references a rigid body. But in order to get this rigid body into like this script, because right now it doesn't know which rigid body to like reference. So we can kind of reference it by doing RB equals get component. And we want a rigid body, so yeah, there we go. Oops, did I do this wrong? Yes, I did this wrong. Okay, so what this line of code means is we're assigning the rigid body to the component of this cube. We're assigning it to the rigid body component of this cube. So now this script will reference this component. Okay, sorry, this is a little bit confusing, but let's say we want to add a force every time we press space. So we're gonna look at our rigid body and we want to add a force. So let's try RB dot add force. Okay, and let's see what it wants. It wants the coordinates of the force. So 0, 1, 2. This essentially just applies a vertical force. That's X, Y, Z. Okay, and then let's make it an explosive force. So force mode dot impulse. Okay, this should work now. Let's see. We're adding a force. Okay, let's play this. Okay, let's see. Let me press space one time. Oh, it does not work. Okay, let's see what's wrong with this. So I made a mistake here. 1 is much too small to create a difference. So let's turn this to 50. Oops, let's go back. Okay, now when I press space, there it goes. And it's gonna come back down. Just wait for it. Oh, I think 50 was way too strong. Yep, there it comes. So 50 is way too strong, but I'm too lazy to go back into my code every single time and hard code in the number. It will jump every single time. So what I can do is I can turn this number into a variable. So let's call this jump amount. And let me create a float called jump amount up here. Okay, so now what this does is it creates a variable in Unity's editor. And, oops, I forgot to save this. Yeah, so now we have jump amount visible in the editor, and I can just drag it up, drag it down. Let's see, I think 8 is a good amount to jump. Okay, now I have this cube. Let's try jumping. Yeah. And there's our game. It's not a very fun game. You can also jump infinitely. But, oops, it's turning around. Yeah, I can jump off the screen now.
Whoa, you can't fly. That's hacking.
Yeah, this is a very bad game.
You can add a ground check to make sure it's touching the ground when you press spacebar. And you also
Yeah,
on the
that would actually be the next step.
and you could lock down the constraints, right? Like you constrain its rotation to make it stay upright.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, so those would all be the next steps. To make this game more fun and less cheatable, again, what this person said, you can check if it's on the ground before pressing space. So that way you can't infinitely jump up. You can also lock its constraints on the rigid body to make it not rotate around. You can make it move left and right. You can change the color, and you can turn this into a fun game. But unfortunately, I don't think we have enough time to do that today. But what matters is you guys should have a small sense of like how to navigate Unity. And if you guys want to get further into game dev, you can search up this dude called Brackies. Let's go on YouTube. Brackies.
Rocky's last video was goodbye and thanks for everything.
Yeah, I was so sad. Okay, this guy is a godsend. He will teach you literally everything you need. His videos are also entertaining, but how I think everyone started in game dev is just this playlist, which is how to make a video game.
If you want to make a video,
And he just guides you through step by step on how to make like this pretty crappy like ball game, but he will get you familiar with how everything in Unity works. And yeah, I want to marry him. But that's it for my really quick Unity tutorial. Hopefully you guys, if you guys are interested, you guys can go and search up Brackies and create your own game. And let me
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Yeah, bye guys.